My name is Megan. This is my story. Some betrayals don't happen suddenly. They breathe quietly for a long time, and when they finally surface, they don't just break your heart, they turn your entire life upside down. I remember the day I thought I had finally become smart in life. I believed I had learned how to recognize people. I believed I no longer made the wrong choices. But the real truth was that I was simply exhausted, tired of being alone, tired of myself, and tired of every empty house that felt even emptier at night. I used to joke, I save the world, one idiot at a time. At the time, I didn't know that this sentence would become the most expensive joke of my life. His name was Bob, or at least that's the name I came to know him by. We met while working at a mall. I worked in one place, he worked in another. Small conversations, casual smiles, and slowly he became a habit. I thought it was normal. I thought it was a connection. A few months passed, my lease ended, and we decided to live together. Looking back now, it feels like that was the day I opened the door to my life with my own hands and gave full permission to the person standing outside. But back then I was just lonely, and he gave me company. At first everything seemed fine, or maybe I wanted it to seem fine. But very quickly certain things started to feel off. He would say things during normal conversations that were completely wrong, and if anyone corrected him, he would twist the discussion so long and so hard that the other person would either give up and agree or fall silent. For him, winning mattered more than the truth. Then there were his claims, statements that sounded like stories. He said he used to live in the jungle before staying at his mother's house. When I asked how he survived without any belongings, he pointed to himself as if he alone was enough. I should have laughed then, but I stayed quiet. The most noticeable thing, though, was his laziness, a kind of laziness that slowly seeps into the air of a house. He would sit unemployed for months, all day in front of a screen, all night chatting online. The house stayed dirty, dishes piled up, and even after coming home exhausted from work, I was the one who managed everything. I worked more, double shifts, sometimes triple, not just for the money but for the hope that maybe tomorrow would be better. I didn't ask him every day but several times a week what was happening with his job. Every time there was a new excuse, every time a new reason. He didn't have a phone, so my phone stayed in his hands. If I was at work, the phone was at home with him. I thought I was helping. I thought I was supporting him. In reality, I was handing my own life over to him. Then the nights began to change. He stayed up late. Sometimes we spent time together, and then suddenly he had just one thing to check. Hours passed and I fell asleep alone. Questions came into my mind, but I pushed them away, because doubting without proof felt wrong to me. Then came the car, sometimes to meet a friend, sometimes for work. I wasn't comfortable, but I said yes. Every time he came back with the car with the phone, he even seemed grateful. But somewhere in my heart something kept shifting, like something had moved slightly out of place. One day he asked again, this time for a tournament. He painted dreams of the future. He talked about money. He promised a better tomorrow. I handed over one more day of my life to him. To manage my loneliness, I turned myself into my own company. After that night my health collapsed. I was completely alone, no phone, no car, no answers. When help finally arrived, life showed me another truth. When you hand everything over to someone and that person disappears, you are left painfully vulnerable. He came back, he looked worried, he apologized, but what my mother's eyes saw that day was something she never forgot. After that, everything began to fall apart slowly. Less money, more bills, and then a new thing entered the house, something that didn't match our situation at all. I thought maybe I was overreacting. But when things started going missing and the answers became even more blurred, I realized that another part of the story was unfolding, a part I wasn't being told. And then one morning, when I thought it was just a headache, life picked up the phone and let me hear something else entirely. A voice that was Bob's. And in that moment I understood, this wasn't just a story of betrayal. It was the doorway to something much deeper, something far more calculated that was now beginning to open. I didn't know that the next phone call wouldn't just reveal the truth, it would permanently change the direction of my life. I hung up the phone, but the effect of that voice didn't leave my ears. The voice was normal, completely ordinary, no anger, no shouting, but the hesitation buried inside it struck me straight in the heart. I stayed sitting on the bed, holding the phone with both hands, as if placing it down might make everything fall apart. My mind kept circling one thought: who was she? And the scariest part wasn't who she was, it was why she had my phone. I tried to steady myself. I told myself maybe I was overthinking, maybe someone had dialed the wrong number, maybe. But my heart refused to accept this maybe. A short while later, the phone rang again. This time I answered immediately. She told me her name, June. Strangely, hearing her name brought a sense of coolness, like the first fragment of truth finally settling in. At first she spoke softly, as if weighing every word before saying it. Then, slowly, things began to unravel, and every sentence became a new wound for me. She said she had known Bob from before, a long time ago, long before I was ever part of his life. Then there was a game, an online space where they started talking again. First jokes, then memories, then long late-night messages. Suddenly all those nights came rushing back to me, nights when Bob sat in front of a screen while I waited for him. I remembered the excuses. I'll be right there. I just need to check one thing. Back then I stayed silent. Now I was trembling. June kept talking and I just kept listening. She told me when he went out to meet friends. She told me how he used my car. And then she said the sentence that emptied me completely. When you were sick, he was with me. In that moment I remembered how I lay alone on the floor, how every breath felt like work, and how I had nothing, no help, no answers. And he was somewhere else. The phone slipped from my hand. I picked it up again, but now tears were streaming down my face. June had gone quiet too. Maybe she realized there was no way back anymore. Then she asked one more thing, something very simple. Do you have a small silver hummingbird necklace? My heart sank. That necklace wasn't just jewelry, it was a gift from my mother. Without saying a word, I opened my drawer, and it was empty. June said he gave it to me as a gift. In that moment I understood that Bob wasn't just betraying me, he was taking my life apart and handing it to someone else. My belongings, my home, my place. June told me more, that she had been to my apartment, that she had seen the place where I slept, that Bob had presented that home as his own. Every word hollowed me out from the inside. Then June said something I will never forget. We should end this together. Something shifted inside me at that moment. The pain slowly began to change into something else, not fully anger yet, but no longer helpless either. Something that was still taking shape. We started planning together, not with too many details, just enough for the truth to come out. When, where, how. I wanted Bob to speak. I wanted him to collapse under the weight of his own lies. I went to my job, but inside I felt completely empty. My feet kept moving, but my mind was somewhere else. I don't remember how I got there. I only remember my heart pounding so loudly it felt like everyone could hear it. Then the moment came when I saw him. Bob was walking toward me. His face carried the same old expression, carefree, slightly nervous, but still confident that I knew nothing. I didn't say anything, I just watched him. He started talking, the same old lines, the same justifications, the same stories. And I let him talk. Because I knew. The real part of the story was still yet to come. At the time, I didn't know that the meeting about to happen wouldn't just expose the truth. It would change 3 lives in a single moment. I stayed silent. That was the hardest thing I have ever done, staying quiet when I had 1,000 reasons to scream. Bob kept talking, and with every word I realized more clearly that he was trapped in his own story. He thought I was just a little upset. He had no idea what was going on inside my head. My eyes were fixed on his face. I was watching every small movement, the way his eyes darted around, the way his sentences lost their structure, and that confidence that only exists when someone believes the person in front of them is blind. He told me he was coming straight here from work. He said the day had been really tough. He said people didn't understand him. I just nodded. Inside my head, only one question kept spinning. How do you lie so easily? June had said she was on her way, but time kept passing. Every second felt heavy. I kept scanning the parking lot, watching every car, but she wasn't there yet. Bob mistook my silence for a win. He stepped a little closer. He tried to put a hand on my shoulder. I stepped back and looked at him. He froze. Maybe for the first time he sensed that something was wrong. "Are you okay?" he asked. I took a deep breath. If I spoke then, everything might have exploded right there, but I wanted the truth to find its own way out. "I'm just tired," I said. It was a lie, but it was a lie that the truth needed. We stepped outside. I lit a cigarette. Bob stood beside me. He started his story again, this time with a softer tone. He said I meant everything to him. He said he was thinking about the future. Every word was hardening something inside me. Then a car turned into the parking lot. I recognized it immediately. June. Even before the car stopped, I knew this moment could not be taken back. June stepped out. There was less anger on her face, more exhaustion, but in her eyes was that question that only comes after betrayal. "Hey Bob," she said, completely calm. Bob's face went completely pale. It was like the ground disappeared beneath him. His phone slipped from his hand. He tried to speak, but the words abandoned him. He sat down on the curb in silence. June and I greeted each other like strangers, a stiff, awkward handshake, as if neither of us wanted to make this moment more real than it already was. Then we both turned our attention back to Bob. June started talking. She listed the dates. She named the places. She laid out all the details that only two people could know, and whose overlap was far more than coincidence. Bob denied it at first, then he made excuses, then he went quiet. His body was there, but his confidence was gone. I didn't say much. When I did speak, it was only to say yes or I remember, but inside I was a storm. Then I remembered, this wasn't just an emotional story. There was more behind it, money, lies, and decisions about my life that had somehow ended up in someone else's hands. I gathered all my strength and finally spoke. "This ends here." Bob looked at me. Fear was in his eyes for the first time. "I'll pack your things, there isn't much. Your sister can contact me, but right now I want my key." He tried to laugh unsuccessfully. Then he refused. He said he wouldn't give the key back until he got his things. He used his large frame to his advantage, like this was just another game. And then he turned and walked away. June looked at me for a moment. Then she lifted the hummingbird necklace from her neck and held it out to me. "I'm sorry," she said. I took the necklace. It was cold, but my fingers were burning. June left. I stood there alone, in the middle of the parking lot with the truth and without any kind of comfort. My body was there, but my soul was somewhere else. Then I cried. I cried like a wall collapsing. At that moment, only one face came to my mind. My mother. I didn't know then that the next step I was about to take wouldn't just shake a relationship, it would shake Bob's entire world. As I drove, I felt my hands shaking. My grip on the steering wheel was tight, but inside everything had already fallen apart. The road ahead was straight, but my thoughts were completely tangled. Every time I stopped at a signal, it felt like time itself was pausing to look at me, asking what now. I picked up my phone. For a few seconds I just stared at the screen. Then I dialed the name that always came to my mind in moments like this. Mom. That was all it took for my voice to break. I poured out the entire story in one breath, as if stopping would mean losing the courage to continue. She listened silently. Then she said just one sentence. "Stay right there, we're coming." The certainty in her voice kept me from collapsing. When I finally saw them, for the first time I felt like I wasn't alone. Mom pulled me into her arms. I cried into her shoulder, without shame, without words. Dad stood quietly beside us. His face showed no expression, but I knew him well. When he went that silent, it meant a decision had already been made. We turned the car around. I didn't ask where we were going. I just knew that whatever came next was no longer in my hands, and maybe that was exactly what would protect me. Our first stop was a place where another piece of the truth was hidden. A place where I had to look again at some of the choices I had made in my life. The atmosphere there was completely normal, people busy with their own lives, but for me everything felt heavy. I saw the item Bob had pawned behind my back. It wasn't just an object, it was proof of my hard work, my helplessness, and my silence. Dad reviewed the paperwork without saying much. Mom opened her purse. I wanted to speak to stop them, but they didn't even look at me. They had already decided. When we left, it felt like I had dropped a weight I'd been carrying for far too long. But the story wasn't over yet. The real step still remained. We went straight to the place where Bob believed he was safe, where he thought everything was still under his control. As I stepped out of the car, I took a deep breath. My heart started racing again, but this time, along with fear, there was a strange sense of clarity. The conversation inside shook me even more. The questions that were asked, the answers that came out, made it clear that Bob wasn't just lying, he had crossed lines. Some things aren't just relationship mistakes, they become matters of law and responsibility. I stood off to the side. I didn't say anything, but my silence didn't mean weakness. Sometimes silence carries the most weight. Dad came back outside. There was a faint smile on his face, but it wasn't a happy one. It was the smile of justice. "I think you'll be getting your key back now," he said. In that moment, I understood that a crack had formed in Bob's world, and that crack wasn't going to close. On the way back, I stayed quiet. My mind was full of questions, but even more than answers, it was waiting. I knew Bob hadn't completely fallen yet. He would still try to save himself. Somewhere he probably believed this would all pass. And me, I was just watching. Because what I had planned, what I hadn't told anyone yet, was still to come. I didn't know then that the next day wouldn't just be difficult for Bob. It would become the quietest and most dangerous turning point of his life. The next day began with a strange kind of silence, the kind that screams in your ears. I woke up and sat on the bed for a while, staring at the ceiling as if it might tell me what was about to happen. My sleep had been incomplete, full of dreams and memories, and both had turned into a burden. I pulled myself together. Crying wasn't allowed today. Weakness wasn't permitted. Today was only for observing and waiting. Bob wasn't home. His belongings were still there, but the sense of his presence was gone. Like a shadow that disappears the moment the light changes, I slowly looked around the apartment. The place that was once our home now felt like it was only mine, and for the first time that realization brought me peace. I started packing his things. Every item I picked up carried a memory with it, sometimes anger, sometimes regret, but I had promised myself I wouldn't look back. 2 boxes, that's all. His life was only entitled to that much space in mine. Around noon his message came through, not directly, circling around the point, as if he still wanted to stay in control. I didn't reply. Silence had become my language. In that silence something occurred to me. Bob always forgot one thing about me. I'm not just emotional, I remember details, I write things down, I note dates, conversations, decisions. He thought I only trusted. He never realized I also observed. I opened my notebook, the one I had once kept only for bills and schedules. Today its pages were telling a different story. Workdays, the days he was out, the nights he didn't come home, the days money went missing. Everything was coming together like pieces of a picture slowly fitting into place. Suddenly I realized this story wasn't just about 3 people. There were others involved, people who still thought they were safe. and maybe this was where the real game began. In the evening his sister messaged me, formal, direct. She asked for a time to pick up his things. I gave her a time but not the place. The apartment was closed to him now. I wanted everything done on my terms. That night June crossed my mind again. The exhaustion on her face, the truth in her voice. I understood then that I wasn't the only one who had been betrayed. The only difference was, I wasn't going to stay silent. Bob probably thought it was all over, that he had already lost what he was going to lose. But in reality, he had only seen the beginning. Some decisions take time, some truths surface slowly, and some revenge waits patiently for the right moment. I looked out the window. The city was moving at its usual pace as if nothing had happened. But for me, time had stopped, right at the point where I could either break or change. And I chose to change. Bob thought everything was already behind him, but the truth was, his hardest day was still yet to come. That morning the air felt unusually clean, the kind of air you don't notice on ordinary days, as if the city itself knew that something was about to end. I woke up early, without an alarm. There was no anxiety in my chest, no confusion in my thoughts, just a strange sense of calm, the kind of calm that comes after a storm has already passed. I made coffee and took my first sip while standing by the window. Today I wasn't going to do anything. Today I was only going to watch, because whatever needed to be done I had already done it, quietly, patiently. The biggest mistake Bob made was assuming I was only emotional. He never thought I could be practical too. He never realized that I didn't just endure things, I remembered them, and most importantly, I understood systems. I didn't threaten anyone, I didn't scream the truth at anyone, I simply placed the truth where it was meant to go. His workplace, his contracts, his signatures, and that thing he had thought was just a temporary solution. Around midday I received a phone call, an unknown number. I answered. "We're calling to inform you that Bob's employment has been terminated with immediate effect." I simply said, "Thank you." My voice was steady. The call ended and I placed the phone back on the table. The coffee had gone cold, but I didn't care. A little while later another call came in. This time the voice was angry, but beneath the anger was fear. "What did you do?" Bob's voice was shaking. I took a deep breath. Today I had no intention of lying. "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "I just let the truth speak." He wanted to scream, I could feel it. But he had no ground left to scream from. He had no job, no home, no story left to save him. Every path had closed, one by one, just like I had closed in on myself that night when I was alone and he was somewhere else. In the evening his sister came. She took the 2 boxes. She looked at me, wanted to say something, then stayed silent. Maybe she understood by then that this wasn't just a breakup, it was a consequence. The door closed, and with it a chapter of my life ended. That night I slept peacefully for the first time. No questions, no doubts, just rest. Years later, when I look at my life, my home, my family, I understand that revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes the best revenge is quietly getting the truth to its conclusion, and then moving forward with your life. Bobby. I don't know where he went. Maybe he's telling stories to someone else. Maybe he's living off someone else's trust. Or maybe he really is out there somewhere in the woods, with nothing but his wits and his lies. And me. I'm right here, alive, free and at peace. Because real revenge isn't about breaking someone. Real revenge is saving yourself and letting the other person carry the weight of what they did.